In 1919, millions of people poured into the streets of Paris, London, and New York to celebrate the end of the Great War. The prevailing belief was that humanity had just survived the conflict that would end all conflict. Historians view the Second World War as the cumulative consequence of three specific diplomatic failures made during the interwar years. History often feels inevitable in hindsight, but different choices at three distinct off-ramps could have prevented a catastrophe that cost over 30 million lives. Instead of rebuilding a fractured world, the victorious nations used the post-war power vacuum to draft a declaration of revenge. The first major failure occurred at the Paris Peace Conference, where the Allied powers prioritized the immediate punishment of Germany over the long-term rehabilitation of the European economy. The Weimar Republic was subjected to severe, quantifiable punishment. Germany was stripped of its overseas colonies, its navy was completely disbanded, and its physical borders were drastically reduced to cut off vital industrial resources. While economic stability alone would not have erased German nationalism or the stab-in-the-back myth, removing the pressure of hyperinflation would have weakened the core messaging extremist parties used to radicalize the desperate middle class. The combination of immense debt and national shame provided the fertile ground Hitler's Nazi Party needed to capture a broken electorate. The terms of Versailles left the continent with a volatile population, primed for retaliation and nursing a deep sense of betrayal. To prevent future global conflicts, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson championed the League of Nations, an international body that was designed to maintain global order through collective security. But that security faced a crucial test when Japan illegally annexed the Chinese territory of Manchuria. The League made its second fatal choice. It did absolutely nothing to intervene. By looking the other way, the League signaled a clear green light to other ambitious dictators. Watching Japan escape consequence directly encouraged Benito Mussolini's fascist Italy to invade Abyssinia shortly after. If the international community swiftly punished these early territorial land grabs, they could have crippled the momentum of these regimes before they gained serious traction. Because the League failed to enforce its own laws, it proved itself to be a meaningless paper tiger. This total lack of accountability allowed the dictatorships in Rome, Berlin, and Tokyo to confidently bind themselves into the Axis alliance. As the 1930s drew to a close, England and France were desperate to avoid repeating the trench warfare of their youth. They adopted a formal policy of appeasement. This strategy meant actively watching Hitler violate international treaties by absorbing neighboring territories like the Rhineland and Austria, all without the Allies firing a single defensive shot. The diplomatic strategy reached its limit when British and French diplomats formally surrendered the Czechoslovakian Sudetenland to Germany. They hoped feeding the Nazi machine this final piece of land would satisfy its expansionist goals. Had the Allies drawn a hard military line during Hitler's very first territorial violation, they would have faced a significantly weaker German military before it had time to consolidate vast European resources. By the time the Allies abandoned the policy of appeasement, Hitler's military had grown exponentially, making the eventual conflict significantly longer and more destructive. Grim. The final breaking point arrived on September 1, 1939. Hitler ordered the invasion of Poland, forcing the British Empire to finally declare war. Powered by the factories and resources of their newly absorbed territories, the German military swept across Europe with terrifying speed, culminating in the shocking surrender of France in the summer of 1940. The conflict then metastasized into the east. Hitler broke his non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union, plunging 2 million soldiers into the freezing, grinding slaughter of the Battle of Stalingrad. Halfway across the world, the final catalyst ignited. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor dragged the immense industrial capacity of the United States directly into the fray. By ruthlessly seizing territory without early pushback, the Axis powers fatally overextended themselves. Their unchecked aggression ultimately forced two sleeping superpowers to mobilize a counteroffensive they could no longer ignore. The conflict came to a brutal conclusion in 1945. Following the surrender of Germany, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, bringing the fighting to an apocalyptic halt. The quantifiable cost of those 3 missed diplomatic off-ramps is staggering. Over 30 million European civilians and soldiers perished, while centuries-old colonial empires collapsed under the massive economic strain of the fighting. The world entered a new bipolar era defined by the Cold War, a direct consequence of regional aggression